Welcome back. I'm Rick Sanchez. Russia and Turkey's top guns sat across from each other today to talk about big guns. They met in Russia, where President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Recept Erdogan talked military hardware. They talked about Syria, and obviously a bone of contention for both of these men, which is the West. It's been something both men have been wanting to conquer, if you will, but they both need to do so in such a way so that they also benefit each other somehow. But how? Here's correspondent John Huddy with more.
It was their first face-to-face meeting since March 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic spread worldwide. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Recep Erdogan meeting in the Black Sea resort city of Sochi. At the top of their discussion list, Syria and the 2020 ceasefire deal that kept both Russia and Turkey from direct military confrontation. Russia has backed Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government during the country's years of civil war. Turkey has taken in around 4 million Syrian refugees and has backed armed rebel groups in the northern part of the country. There's been an increase in violence despite the ongoing truce, including more Syrian government airstrikes and shelling this past June. Turkey deployed more troops to the northern border to try and counter Syria's airstrikes and act as a deterrent. Russia's defense ministry, meanwhile, blamed the shelling on rebel fighters. While both Russia and Turkey have diplomatic relations, the relationship has often been shaky in recent years, due in large part to their often conflicting interests in Syria. Still, both have grown closer as tensions with the United States have also grown. Turkey is in talks to buy more Russian-made S-400 air defense systems, drawing ire from the United States and other Western powers. And on September 24th, President Erdogan even said his talks with President Biden have thus far been, quote, disappointing, and that Turkey would seek closer ties with Russia. It's a safe bet U.S. officials, including President Biden, were likely watching what came out of Wednesday's meeting in Sochi and, of course, the topic of Syria. The United States maintains a small military presence in Syria, 900 troops, mostly to contain any lingering threats of ISIS, protect various oil fields, and to keep an eye on Iranian forces in nearby Iraq. At the start of Wednesday's meeting, President Erdogan said, quote, "The steps we take together regarding Syria carry great importance. The peace there is dependent on Turkey-Russia ties." Putin, who made only brief comments about Syria in his opening statements, added that negotiations with Turkey are sometimes difficult, but that both countries have learned to find compromises that are beneficial to both sides. While Turkey and Russia work to establish those compromises that perhaps result in some semblance of peace in Syria, there is another war that is also being fought there, the one against the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic that remains a deadly adversary as well. For the news with Rick Sanchez, John Huddy.
Former Pentagon official Michael Maloof joins us now to talk about this. This is a fascinating story. Let me put you back in your old shoes where you worked at the Pentagon, or let me make you an official or an advisor to the President of the United States, Joe Biden. He's watching this situation, and he's thinking, oh, my God, I got Erdogan and Putin meeting face-to-face. What's the concern?
The concern is that a NATO member, Turkey, could begin to shift more and more. He's making compromises with Mr. Putin, and of course, that's Putin's goal, is to drive a wedge between NATO members, and he also knows that Turkey wants to do away with Kurds, who the U.S. supports.
Does Putin like this guy, you think, or is he just playing him?
I think he puts up with him. He does get aggravated. But you see, Mr. Putin has a tendency to compartmentalize the issues with Erdogan.
That's well said. With everyone.
Yes, but especially with Putin because of his geographical location and influence. But because he has a larger strategic vision, of which Turkey plays a vital role for Russia. And we're seeing that more and more. It isn't by accident that Erdogan announced just before this meeting, I think I'll buy another battery of S-400s.
Yeah.
Of course, that sets Biden
the Russian
off.
Missile defense system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That sets Biden off.
And that's a big deal. It's not a little. We're not talking about a pea shooter here. That's a major.
It's a major thing, and it's also disrupting the views of the allies. But you got to keep in mind that Erdogan has leverage over even our European allies, and they're not screaming screaming and yelling about this.
But this is fascinating. Let me tell you what I see going on here, which I want your opinion on. NATO seems to be going through a schism right now. You've got this situation with Macron, who's still really sore about this deal that he thinks he got big-footed by the United States on with Australia. You've got a member of NATO in Erdogan and Turkey essentially thumbing his nose at the organization he's beholden to and saying, "The hell with you guys! I'm going to go do a deal with my cousin Putin over here." I mean, that doesn't look good, right?
Well,
what does it say about NATO?
It says it has an identity crisis. It's been almost positioned into irrelevancy because, as you point out, Macron wants to reestablish a strictly European defense system because they can no longer trust the U.S. leadership.
Is that because it has, when I say the United States in general, has the U.S. pushed NATO too much? Some would use the word bullying into what they want.
It's a combination.
Is that part of the?
It's a combination of course, the Trump influence there in pushing them to live up to their responsibilities, but they also had an identity issue. What are we going to do now in the post-war period? You had to consider what NATO was established for. It was
to stop Russia and China.
Exactly.
To stop the
Russia.
communists, supposedly, right?
Yeah, and that's going away. And now you have Turkey, who's a NATO member, doing more and more deals with Erdogan with Putin.
Final question about Erdogan: is he a strategic thinker? Or is he a lunatic?
No, he's not a lunatic. I think he has his own vision. He's very assertive. He has visions, ultimately, of extending his influence into areas that are traditionally of Russian influence, namely Central Asia, and along with Qatar. He may be introducing Wahhabism into Central Asia, which is going to absolutely create friction, ultimately, between these two.
When he does these things, he knows he's creating that kind of friction?
Sure he does.
And is that why he's doing it?
But he knows that both sides need each other. He knows that Putin needs him to put a wedge in NATO, and Putin is okay with that so long as he doesn't go too far. Erdogan will only go so far.
Final question, yes or no. Do you think this guy does some of these things because he wants to read his name in the headlines?
No, I think he has grand designs to and he has grand designs to establish a neo-Ottoman empire once again.
Wow. Great conversation, as usual. I love talking to you.